This is the Blue Collar Future podcast where we talk about the future of trade work. I'm your host, Jaden Robison. I haven't been introducing myself on some of these last episodes, so if you're a new listener, I appreciate you joining in to watch this podcast. This episode is kind of my thoughts throughout the week and some updates on some things that have been going on in my life and some observations. Last week we talked about to being mindful of how you spend your time, and it was Memorial Day, and being mindful is kind of the nature of Memorial Day, being mindful of the sacrifices that our ancestors have made, our people who have served our country and died for us, and all of the above, being mindful. This week, I want to talk about being busy and staying on track. I hear a lot of folks, a lot of blue collar guys talk about how they don't have time for everything. And that is a common theme on this podcast, talking about time and how we spend it. Today, I want to talk about being busy and staying on track, and also how easy it is to get discouraged. Basically, there's opposition in all things, and that doesn't mean it's bad. Opposition is good. And I would say if you don't have opposition in your life, you don't feel like there's something pushing against you, then you probably need to branch out a little bit, because from that place is where we can grow and learn new things as humans. It is an interesting phenomenon that way, that through something hard, through something that pushes us and challenges us, we come out the other side stronger. It's the basis of learning, of, physical fitness. You push yourself and tear yourself down to build yourself up again. Um, Growth and expansion all happens that way. And I talk about that a lot. If you've listened to this podcast enough, you know that I talk about growth and becoming who you need to be. Who do I have to become? What do I need to do to get there? What does the person that I want to be do in their free time, in their spare time? How do they think about things? How do they manage themselves? Today, there we talk about, we're going to talk about there is opposition in all things. This week, it has been a crazy week, and I felt like the world is against me, basically. And not in a way that I've been getting discouraged, but I just feel like I have just felt like all week that there's just always something to do and always something preventing me from getting it done. And I've been doing this long enough to realize that that's a good thing, and I'm glad and happy for it. But I see a lot of people that take no comfort in that. At this point, it's almost comforting to me to have a lot on my plate, and it almost keeps me focused, having so much to do that I have to stay on track so that I can't just waste time and dilly-dally, because I get easily distracted, very easily distracted. And if I don't have a lot going on, it is very hard to stay on track. I have a tendency of trying to take on too much or trying to do too much. But over time, I feel as though trying to do too much constantly allows me to be able to do more, because I get used to it. And with all the added responsibilities and all the added tasks, it becomes easier and easier and easier. And that is what I tell people to do when they're trying to start a hobby, when they're trying to level up in their job, when they're trying to add on some sort of daily habit or routine. You start small and you add things on until it becomes natural, and really add on, because when you're from this place of stagnation and you have all this free time, adding in even one thing feels like you don't have any time. But over time, you start to prioritize differently, and it becomes easier to do this task. Like, let's say working out, for example, you may feel like you don't have time, but when you're consistently pushing to work out, let's say a few times a week, which is all I do, it becomes a habit and it just kind of falls into place to have the time. As long as you, in your mind, know that it needs to be done, you will make it happen. So this week, been busy. It's been a long week. I've been busy with this podcast and posting on social media. A lot of you know that I'm running a couple different accounts and creating a lot of content, which in and of itself is hard. And I've added on different routines and tasks up until this point. At first, I was only doing personal page. I started adding on our concrete company content and creating that. And kind of right before that, I was doing the podcast stuff. And then I kind of started focusing on more on that. My next steps are getting my personal content to where it should be and at least having an idea of what I want to create. And then the next step is adding on YouTube videos for our concrete company. A lot of people have been wondering when we're going to release, what if we have a YouTube channel, and actually saying that we need to have one and all of that from the Instagram. So that's been on my list of things. But I take on kind of one thing at a time until I get it to where I feel like I'm on top of it and that it's a part of my habit and my schedule. So I've been busy with all of the social media and content creation, and I feel like I've been falling behind. Been busy with work. We've had a lot to do this week, working late, and mainly because it's hot. It feels like we've been working really late every day, when in reality, we've probably been working 9, 10 hour days, maybe. And this week had been super busy with trying to get our house to the point where we can pour the floors, which we're going to do Monday when this episode releases. We will be pouring the floors so that the framers can start the next day. If any of you know much about construction, there's a lot that has to come up to that point. We've been dealing with getting plans approved, finalized, sent into city, county, inspections getting done, different contractors being scheduled, um, materials being brought in, making sure we have the necessities on site, like the portables, the portable shitters, and our temp power. There's been a bunch of things that we've had to do, and I've been kind of sprinkling that in between in time that I have after work, before work, whatever happens. So it's been a lot of really long days. I feel like I have just, it's just been crazy. But I've been able to stay on top of all of this, being busy, having all of this stuff to do. And a lot of the guys I hear complain about not having time, I see what you guys are doing. You guys have time. Yes, you're busy, but it's because there's so much distraction and there's so many different directions to go. And it just leads to doing nothing rather than doing something productive. I feel like I haven't had really any downtime this whole, like the last couple weeks. It's been evenings and weekends working on the house and doing this podcast and doing content creation. But to get to this point where I've been able to stay on top of this stuff reasonably well, it's taken a long time of adding something in here, adding something in there to my schedule, and building it to a place where my brain, my mind can handle that workload, that I can handle staying on top of all of these tasks. This week would have wrecked me if I didn't stay on top of that, because it got super hot really out of nowhere. And I've been really good lately about supplementing, eating enough food, and having enough water, drinking enough water. And it wasn't that bad this week, but it was still really hot. And there's been times where heat waves like this come through and they absolutely wreck me. But I've still been able to go to the gym, and I've still been able to work on the house until, 7, 8 o'clock at night and do this podcast and create content and do all that stuff. because of how conscious I've been about how I'm spending my time and staying on track and just realizing that it just needs to be done. And this is what I've committed myself to. And there's no point in getting upset or frustrated or discouraged because it just needs to be done. I'm going to kind of go into some of the things that I feel like have helped me along this path. And there's some little tweaks that I've just made over the years that have helped me a ton. Um, I've never really been one of to take supplements. I've not really cared about supplements the last probably 3 years. I just haven't taken any. And before that, it wasn't anything too serious. Lately, I have been taking protein powder, um, creatine, and magnesium every day. And then I've started doing electrolytes as well. And especially because of how hot it's been, the electrolytes, the creatine, the magnesium, protein powder, everything has all been super helpful in mitigating dehydration and abuse from the sun. I've still been able to work out and it's still been fine. I've been getting home late and all of my workouts have been at 8 o'clock at night and it's been fine. Been able to wake up the next morning and get right back at it because I've been on top of these things. Another thing has been protecting myself from the sun. I absolutely hate sunscreen. I've always just not worn it. I wear it for a while at the start of the year so I don't get too burnt, and then I just kind of stop wearing it. And lately, I've been wearing long sleeve, SPF rated hooded shirts that are breathable and they protect you from the sun. And they have been an absolute game changer for me. I've went from having one of these in the last 6 months to having like 12 different shirts. And just all day long, I just keep my hood up on over my head, keep my long sleeve shirt on, protects me from the sun. That sun takes a ton out of you, especially if you're out there all day and you're getting burnt and whatever. I've noticed that I haven't even really been sweating that much more than normal. It's just been better. At the end of the day, I don't feel like I'm completely drained, even though it's been upwards of 100 degrees. Been working 10, 12 hours in it. The other day, it was 95, and I worked an entire 12 hours in the sun. I believe that was only possible from the supplements and the fact that I've been taking care of myself and I just know what needs to be done. And these, the sun protection that I've been doing has been paying off because that sun really takes a ton out of you. The heat does, the UV rays, they just take a ton of energy out of you. By the end of the day, you're wiped out. With all of this being said, it still has felt like this week there's been just a bunch of opposition against getting this stuff done. And that is comforting for me. When I hear people talk about how it seems like they can't get anything done, things always preventing them from completing things that they know they should do. I start to kind of think in my head, well, if you're not getting them done, then they must not be priorities because if you know it needs to be done and you have these priorities set, then you just do it. Working out for me is one of those things. It's a priority. I know it needs to be done. Just going to do it. Working until 7 in the heat isn't very fun. But in order to get things done that need to be done in a timely manner, just going to do it. And I find that the more I avoid taking on things that are uncomfortable and that I don't want to do, the less happy I am because then you just prolong this general unease about doing this task, like dealing with a client that you don't want to talk to, dealing with a problem that you feel like you can not touch for a while and it'll just kind of take care of itself. In reality, it just prolongs this issue and makes it harder down the road. There is opposition in all things. being busy is not necessarily a bad thing. Keeping yourself on track is super important. With that, going to leave you with that. That's it for today. I've got a lot of thoughts this week and got some cool things coming. I think I'm going to be bringing on a co-host and at the very least starting a series. And I will be cluing some people into that in the coming weeks. I've got some cool guests lined up in the next few months. And it's going to be interesting to see how I deal with everything that is coming forward. Because you never know what curveballs life can throw at you. And, I have a baby on the way and the house being built. Um, and with that, our floors being poured today as this airs, and our framers are starting, and we're gonna go forward with that in this, general uneasy time, and where a lot of people are kind of pumping the brakes, and I keep kind of thinking about this and getting uncomfortable and thinking that maybe it's not the right time. But that's how I know that it is going to really pay off, because oftentimes when things are the hardest, when people are not making moves, will be able to get the most bang for your buck on everything, the most ROI from your time and your work is when people are holding back and you are pushing forward. When everybody is jumping in on the train and trying to make moves, um, there's less to go around and there is less of an ROI. So appreciate everybody listening. If you like this podcast, share with a friend who you think will get something out of it, and we will see you next week.